everyone, it's Maya. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the evolution of the classic mold. So, one thing I've always found funny is that my dad cannot tell any of the AG face molds apart at all. My mom can kind of tell some of them apart, but to my dad they all look exactly the same. But those of us who are really into AG dolls know that even two Laney dolls, for example, are going to look a little bit different, even though they're supposed to be the exact same doll and have the same face mold. So there are a few different reasons for this. It could be because the mold ended up a little different, so their face shape is slightly different, or it could be because the face paint is placed a little differently on the different dolls, etc. So, the classic mold, the first ever mold for American Girl dolls. One thing I realized the other week is that I only own one classic mold doll, Laney, and at first I was really surprised because I remember back in middle school I used to make doll wish lists and there were a ton of classic mold dolls on those lists. But then I realized that this actually really wasn't that surprising. Why? Well, I've noticed that the classic mold has changed a lot over the years, and I honestly don't really like how it looks now, so a lot of dolls that I once liked that are classic mold dolls just don't appeal to me anymore. So I wanted to make this video to share my observations and see if anyone else has noticed these changes and feels similarly to me. So let's start by talking about the OG classic mold, way back in the day. It's pretty easy to spot an older American Girl doll with the classic mold because there are some very noticeable differences. As you can see, the faces look wider. I think it's mostly in the cheeks. There's also something different about the eyes. I think they look more sunken in, and they honestly have kind of a sad, sorrowful look to them. I used to own a Kit doll that was made in the early 2000s, and you can instantly tell that she's an older doll because her face just looks so different from newer classic mold dolls. So at some point in the mid-2010s, I noticed a pretty interesting change in the classic mold. So I called this look the chipmunk face because for some reason this version of the mold really reminds me of a chipmunk. It's hard for me to articulate what exactly is different about the dolls with this version of the classic mold, but something just looks off to me. I feel like they have a very intense gaze, and there's definitely something different about the cheeks. That's what's giving me the whole chipmunk idea. And I'm not really a fan of this version of the classic mold, but I do remember that when this version of the mold was around, it wasn't something that all classic mold dolls had. It was just some here and there. So, in the past few years, there's been an even more drastic change with the classic mold. Honestly, current classic mold dolls look almost unrecognizable to me. I don't think I would have necessarily realized that they had the classic mold if I didn't already know. The face looks a lot thinner and the eyes almost look beady to me. I really don't like this version of the classic mold. And unlike the chipmunk mold that I mentioned just before, I've noticed that all new classic mold dolls seem to have this new, thinner face with the beadier eyes. It's really put me off of classic mold dolls now. I'm not really sure why the classic mold has changed so much over the years and why there seems to be so much variation. I really only scratched the surface. I talked about how older dolls, like from the Pleasant Company era, and my Kit from the early 2000s have a different version of the face, and I'm honestly not even really sure when that version went away. But what's really interesting to me is that, at least to me, it seems like the other face molds don't have this drastic variation. Besides the Kaya mold, which they did actually revamp, I don't really notice that much difference between like two Jess mold dolls or two different Josefina mold dolls. I don't know if maybe you guys agree or not. Maybe there is a difference and I just have trouble seeing it with different molds. Have you noticed these changes either before you saw this video or now looking back after watching this video? Let me know your thoughts. I'm really interested to hear if other people feel the same way about these changes to the classic mold. So yeah, that's basically why I don't really own any classic mold dolls besides Laney. I still do like a lot of classic mold dolls, but I guess the fact that I know I couldn't just go to a store and buy a new classic mold doll kind of puts it puts me off it. Like I'd have to go searching on eBay or something to find an older version of the doll that I really like. So thank you guys so much for watching. This was a kind of unconventional video, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!